what up Randies? My name is Stan from RandomTens, and whether you forgot or not, tomorrow is officially Mother's Day. And in the spirit of everything motherly, here's an appropriately themed countdown on the top 5 best baby Pokemon ever created. Now, for those of you who don't know, yes, there is actually an entire group made up of 18 different Pokemon officially referred to as baby Pokemon. So why are some monsters like Cleffa and MUNCHLAX considered members of this adorable squad, while equally cute creatures like Teddiursa and Phione are not? Well, according to Bulbapedia, there are 3 main factors in determining if a Pokemon is part of the baby group. They must be obtainable by breeding, they must be the lowest form in their family chain and evolve at least once, and finally and most importantly, they must belong to the undiscovered egg group. Now, normally I would rank these 18 pre-K Pokemon based on stats, design, and impact on the series as a whole, but let's be serious, nobody cares about the competitive viability of Pokemon with an average base stat total of 276. So for this video alone, I'm solely judging these petite powerhouses based on design and impact, and not so much on their battle ability. And so without wasting any more time, let's hop into this countdown. Number 5. You can throw as many insults as you want at the first Pokemon featured on this list, but the fact remains that it likely won't even hear you over the ridiculous amounts of food it's devouring. In the number 5 spot, we have MUNCHLAX, and despite what you may think, there was a time when this was the most popular Pokemon on the planet. A very short amount of time, mind you, but when it first burst onto the scene, MUNCHLAX had the distinction of being the first Gen 4 Pokemon ever revealed, and fans of the first generation of games couldn't have been happier. We waited 4 generations for Snorlax to get an evolution, and in my opinion, Game Freak did the best job they could given the enormous task. MUNCHLAX is a memorable member of the Pokemon family because it loves to eat. It's the unabashed gluttony to Snorlax's sloth, and whether you were watching the anime, playing the games, or beating your friends in Brawl, you knew that this Pokemon was appetite incarnate. You mix this defining trait with an adorable design that keeps everything we love about Snorlax while giving the creature some mobility, and there's no denying that MUNCHLAX is a winner. Now, admittedly, it's not the most creative design, as Ken Sugimori played it fairly safe, probably to avoid disappointing the Gen 1ers too much, but even though it may not pop, MUNCHLAX still absolutely has enough going on to deserve its number 5 placing on this countdown. Number 4. This next entry, in my opinion, is the best baby Pokemon design created so far, and if I had my way, you'd better believe it would take the top spot. However, going by the criteria I've based this countdown around, Mantike simply doesn't have the impact required to emerge victorious. I always felt like this evolutionary line in general was grossly underrated, but together I believe the Mantike family is one of the most creative and slickest among all the water types. Regarding Mantike specifically, the dual use of blue coloring and the attention-grabbing smiley face design on its back help give it an identity all of its own. But in the end, this has got to be one of the most cheerful and charismatic baby Pokemon the franchise has ever churned out. Just look at it and try not to smile. The only downside is, as mentioned before, it really doesn't have much of an impact on the overall series, and due to its convoluted breeding system, I'd imagine most players bypass it during playthroughs, unless they're purposely seeking to hatch one for their team. So next time you're looking for a solid water type to add to your party, I urge you to grab a Wave Incense and breed your very own Mantike. Just don't forget the Remoraid when taking on the Elite Four. Number 3. Now, I imagine opinion on this next electrifying entry may be split among the Pokemon fanbase. On one hand, it's the pre-evolution of one of the all-time greatest speedsters from Pokemon's heyday. But on the other, ELEKID literally looks like a plug. No, like seriously, I never noticed how much this Pokemon actually looks like my iPhone charging cube until I was planning this video. All that aside, ELEKID earns its spot on this countdown because along with having multiple appearances in the anime series, manga, and spin-off games, this electric toddler also sports one of the most minimal and engaging designs among all Thunder-type Pokemon. With its bold black on yellow color scheme and the lightning bolt patterns across its stomach and limbs, this Pokemon is cute, has plenty of attitude, and could never be mistaken for any other creature because it stands out so much. Some people prefer Magby, and others even consider Smoochum the best of the 3, but because of its signature design and the fact that Paul had a very cool one on his team, ELEKID deserves its number 3 spot, even if it is just a plug. Number 2. How do you take one of the most iconic mascots ever and make it more appealing, more marketable, and more adorable? Well, you sorta can't. I mean, they tried that with Pikachu like 7 different times and it still hasn't worked out. But the closest they ever came was absolutely when they unleashed PICHU upon the world. Based on the criteria stated, this Pokemon was guaranteed to be in the top 3 based on impact alone. It's been featured in a few short films starring the PICHU brothers, found its way into promotions and onto consoles in a push to capture a younger demographic, and as we all know was the token joke character in the evergreen Super Smash Bros. Melee. The point is that during Gen 2, PICHU was everywhere, and as far as generational mascots go, it certainly had a much bigger impact than many of the others. Now, in terms of design, it sort of falls into that same space as MUNCHLAX, where it's obvious the mission was to keep it as close to its evolution as possible, while still punching up its cuter features, and in that way it does succeed. However, it clearly doesn't reinvent the wheel, and absolutely is one of the safest designs to come out of the entire franchise. Still though, there's something irresistible about this pint-sized Pikachu, and if it wasn't for this final entry, it absolutely would have taken the top spot. Number 1. You guys probably already know which baby Pokemon made it to number 1, but before I reveal it in full, allow me to remind you why this Pokemon rightfully deserves it. This Spikeball Pokemon was the first egg or baby Pokemon the community had ever seen. It has the most appearances throughout Pokemon's media empire when compared to its infantile peers, and if you play Generation 2 or its remakes, this Pokemon is a mandatory member of your team unless you decide to throw it away or stuff it in a box. In fact, this is the only baby Pokemon that truly factors into any of the game's overarching narratives, as the whole reason you start your quest in Gen 2 is to pick up its egg from Professor Elm. That's right folks, I'm talking about everyone's favorite breakfast Pokemon, TOGEPI. Despite Generation 2 introducing many baby Pokemon, it was TOGEPI that helped prime unsuspecting fans of the popular cartoon for the series' foray into breeding. And I can only speculate that the reason TOGEPI was chosen rather than an Igglybuff or Cleffa has to be attributed to its design. This egg-like Pokemon is the perfect personification of breeding as a whole, and the perfect ambassador for the entire baby Pokemon group because it's unique, it's heart-wrenchingly adorable, and most of all, it's so helpless that it couldn't even shed its egg in full. Okay, I know that technically it just looks like an eggshell and it's actually a part of its body, but still the visual cue that this Pokemon is so innocent that it couldn't even shed its own shell while hatching is the embodiment of what a baby Pokemon is supposed to be. And so for being creative, being impactful, and being cuter than Kirby shouting Hadouken, I think it's only fair to say that TOGEPI is the best baby Pokemon ever created. Thanks so much for watching this one, guys, and I wouldn't be surprised if I end up making a top 5 worst baby Pokemon list because honestly some of them are very forgettable or just sort of drop the ball altogether. Until then, make sure you let me know your favorite baby Pokemon in the comment section below. Maybe check out some of our other Pokemon related countdowns, and as I always say, happy hunting baby rhinos!